Every year we're hearing more and more about the Greenpeace organization. Certainly about this time of year right now we're hearing about their annual seal expedition, which is going to be happening very, very shortly. Earlier on, of course, or was it last year? I guess it was late last year we heard about the whaling, and I'm sure we'll hear more about it as the year progresses. We're going to be talking about Greenpeace over the next 40-odd minutes, and with me from the Greenpeace organization is Dr. Patrick Moore. Pat, I welcome you, and I say that the Greenpeace organization has certainly grown an awful lot from the days when it first started.
Well, thank you, Chuck. It really has grown, particularly in the last 2 or 3 years. We began, as you know, in about 1970, sailing a ship to Amchitka Island in the Aleutians to try to bring attention to the United States nuclear testing program there. And we really were just a handful of people at that point. There were a dozen of us, got on an old fishing boat, and John Cormack took us up to the Aleutian Islands, and with a small radio phone on the ship, we kept in touch with Vancouver and tried to create as much awareness as we could at that time.
And you certainly did, you know. Did you ever think it would go as far as it's gone just to this point?
Well,
I mean, in those days?
Myself being an ecologist, and at that time, I was a graduate student in ecology at UBC, I really did, I did foresee that the environmental movement was going to have to grow a great deal if we were going to avoid some of the problems that I was being taught about then, and that have become even more dangerous and requiring more attention since then. I had no idea that Greenpeace would grow into what it has grown into. There really wasn't a Greenpeace at that time. Our boat was named Greenpeace, but the group we were working with called itself the Don't Make a Wave Committee because of the fact that the Amchitka nuclear test might cause a tidal wave.
Right.
The idea of calling the boat Greenpeace came up early in our meetings to go up to Amchitka, and during the voyage itself the idea of forming a Greenpeace organization came up, and when we got back to Vancouver we set about doing that in order to protest the French atmospheric nuclear tests in the South Pacific, the voyages that David McTaggart sailed against the atom bombs being exploded in the air above Mururoa Atoll down there. And since then it's taken on many other causes, from whales and seals to nuclear reactors. The supertanker issue on the West Coast is one of our major concerns now. We have people working on the problem of mercury pollution in Canada in conjunction with Japanese people who are victims of Minamata disease, and we've been successful in bringing medical experts from Japan to Canada in order to diagnose some of the Indian people in particular who've been afflicted with this mercury poisoning as a result of the pulp and paper industry in both BC and in Ontario.
But you know, you've done more than that. You've had a profound effect on what I shall term as the great middle class, myself included. You've had a profound effect in changing our ways of thinking, making us aware. Because, you know, I think when you sailed off on the Amchitka thing, on the Amchitka protest, a lot of us looked at those of you at the time at the Don't Make a Wave Committee as a bunch of kind of crazy people doing their thing.
And you were probably right in one sense.
And then that thing came home to us, not to everybody, but I certainly recall vividly that Saturday when the blast went off. Couldn't help thinking of you people, but you were well out of the way at that particular time. And I remember that particular Saturday when that blast went off, sitting in this very studio watching a seismograph chart it. And then when that thing went off, I watched it on the floor, not 10 feet from where we're sitting, watched that thing move, and said, my God, we're these many miles away from it. And it does affect us, and it brought it very, very close to home, at least personally. Right. But in watching your organization and interviewing members of it over the years, I've seen how it's changed from, you could say, a radical bunch of people who are interested in the ecology to an organization that is achieving a great deal of respect from everybody and achieving a status of being, well, I'm going to use the word again, a middle-class organization.
Well, I don't know if I
As you
agree
get
with
more and
the
more people
concept
with
of
you.
middle-class
I
organization.
may be picking the wrong word. But
It is definitely our intention to appeal to the mass spectrum of people, to the whole spectrum of people. And from the beginning, we've realized that it wasn't only necessary to pick out individual examples like nuclear testing or like whales being exterminated or seals being slaughtered to extinction. The really important thing is to, through choosing the right examples, to set an example that develops a new consciousness or a new ethic in people's understanding. And as you say, this creates a new way of thinking in people, which is basically a change in our attitudes towards the natural world, a change in our attitudes towards each other as a result of this, and hopefully a return to a better understanding of our relationship with nature. This is what we see as one of the most serious problems of modern civilization, is that because of the machinery and the gigantic urban structures that we've created, we have removed ourselves so far from nature. And you have people now who are driving in masses in automobiles down 8-lane highways that were once forests, and these people are so removed from what is actually sustaining them, from the cows and the wheat fields and the fishing grounds and the agricultural land. They're so far removed from this that we're afraid that people have lost touch with what's really important in keeping them alive and keeping them healthy.
yeah, but yet your organization and others like you, and like-minded people, whether they're members of organizations or not, have again influenced ourselves, our country, have influenced many, many countries in matters of ecology, protection of the environment. We pay much more attention to it now than we did before. Certainly, at least, let's say, 15, 20 years ago, there was just probably very few voices crying aloud then. But now it becomes a very, very serious issue.
There's two reasons for this, I think. Firstly, there was no need for a high level of ecological awareness or environmental awareness on the part of a large number of people, because there was no problem until the Industrial Revolution. And in particular, since the Second World War, the impact of humanity on what is now a very fragile structure of the biology of the earth, on all the animals and on all the plants and on the cycles that take place in order to keep us and all of them alive, our impact has become so great that it's now become necessary for people to understand these relationships and to understand how we must change our ways in order not to disrupt things so drastically. The other reason why it has come to people's attention is because this has been our primary purpose, has been to choose issues that represent the problem very well, such as the extermination of the whales, the marine mammals, and nuclear testing, the pollution with radiation of the whole Earth. We've chosen these examples, and we've shown a willingness to place our own lives on the line in between the people who are using the technology and the nature that is being destroyed by that technology. So this is what we've...
But you've been accused, by your terminology, laying your lives on the line, you've been accused of grandstanding to draw attention to an issue. I would say, though, that you have been successful as well.
Sure, if you want to call it grandstanding,
it served its purpose.
Perhaps to a certain extent it is. We're not trying to become martyrs or heroes or anything. We're trying to, maybe as you say, grandstand. We're trying to point out the situation, that's all. And there's no doubt about it that when we place ourselves in these situations between harpoons and whales or between sealers and seals, we are on actual expeditions out in the middle of the ocean or out on an ice floe 80 miles off the coast, and it is a dangerous situation. There's no doubt about that. But as far as making sure we get in front of the cameras goes, that could be called grandstanding, I suppose. But what's the use of doing something in a vacuum?
Yeah, exactly.
The real strength of the Greenpeace organization is the fact that there is a media network in the world today that is capable of communicating what's going on to the mass of people.